Hi everyone, it's Adam with Milo's Restoration, and today I've got a video for you about this set of thrift store dining room chairs that I found, and I bought them and decided to bring them home to paint them and reupholster them. I've been kind of learning a little bit about upholstery, and I'm kind of trying to figure it out for myself on simple projects, not on very complex ones. So I thought this would be a good test subject. I started by pulling apart the um, dowels on the corners right there because they were like really loose, I guess, just from years of people leaning back on the chair. So I really just filled the areas with glue that I could and got the dowels put back in, and then I clamped everything up, screwed it together, and then the screws kind of acted as clamps. And so I was able to take the clamps off and move on to the next chair. And I did all four of these like this. The fronts were very tight though, so I just didn't really need to do anything to those. So this is some quick wood here, and I like it because it's a little bit less messy than like Bondo, but it also dries at about the same hardness in the same time. So I decided that I wanted to take those armrest off because I figured that if somebody only had four chairs, they probably weren't going to really use it for a dining room per se, more for like a kitchen set. So that was just kind of, you know, my idea. And I filled those with the quick wood, and then I got started cleaning with this M1 cleaner and deglosser, and then I wiped it off with a damp rag. So we're going to do three coats of primer. We're going to do one coat of Centurion's water-based acrylic primer, and it's catalyzed at about 15%. So you'll see me adding the catalyst to that. And then we're also going to do two coats of Centurion's final modified sealer. And these are all pigmented products. I just decided to go with painting it and using a pigment. This was really nothing special. As far as these chairs go, if I had to guess, probably 70s or 80s kind of time period. It had a Sears and Roebuck tag on it. And I just didn't really think that refinishing them and restaining them was really going to be worth it to me or to anyone who might potentially buy them. So when it comes to sanding, on a set like this, I'm not even really going to break out the orbital sander around orbit. I'm just going to use my surf prep, and I'll just try to get those little areas that I had to fill obviously sanded with like a 180 grit or heavier grit. But for the rest of the piece, it really just needs like a very fine or fine. And then I'll put my primer, and then pretty much everything from there is going to be with superfine pad. And so this is that Centurion uh, acrylic primer, and I'm adding the catalyst here. You want to add the catalyst and mix it at the same time. And I'm going to spray, like I said, three coats. I'm using a 1.8 on a Fuji, and I'm using a cap spray turbine. Probably not the best idea, but you know, um, I think that by the time you get to the end of that hose, you've got way less than 10 psi anyway. So to me, it's really not that big of a concern because most of these guns shouldn't be used over 10 psi if you're mixing and matching, with the exception of the cap spray. But you have to think about that hose, that you have so much extra slack, and by the time you get there, it's very rare that you will have 10 psi at the cap. So this is just kind of my workflow. I decided that while I was waiting for that primer to dry, I tried to get started on the upholstery. And I just like to take my linesman pliers or just any other kind of pliers that I have like that and try to rip the fabric and try to get the staples out all in one. It saves you a little bit of work from having to go back with a nail puller, a staple remover, and remove every single staple. So I'm just doing some sanding in between coats. You can see where those stain spots are really bad at. That's why I like to use that vinyl modified product, because I find that I'm just not really patient enough to wait for the 2800 series of the 2K primer to dry for a whole night and then respray it. I'm just going to go ahead and use that vinyl product over that and block those staining spots and just kind of take care of it then. You could wait though and do a second coat with the same primer the next day, but for me, it's just not really super time effective, and I kind of like the vinyl primer anyway. Um, I just find that the 2K products are just a little bit. They have a lot of body to them, and they spray. You can put a lot of wet mills on without getting any runs, but that vinyl modified primer, they probably both nominally have about an hour dry time, but it dries so much faster. And as long as I spray it out of a conventional and not an HVLP turbine gun, so that's what I'm using here is a conventional spray gun, I'm going to get pretty good results with it and not have to really mess with it very much. If you use an HVLP, you have to add a lot of lacquer retarder to it. I don't understand the science behind that. I can't tell you why. I just know that that has been my experience. Everything sprays better out of conventional than a turbine sprayer, including these products. But the problem is it just creates so much overspray. So this is my first coat of that Centurion 1K top coat, and I'm going to be using the color Edgecomb Gray. I figured that, grayish has kind of been the trend as of recent, even though I've heard from some people that it's kind of turning away from that. Uh, it's still a very popular color in most people's houses. So I decided to go with an Edgecomb Gray, and we're going to go with a charcoal fabric. And those two colors, I'm you know, a guy that's been a contractor his whole life. I'm not someone that's particularly interested in interior design per se. I kind of just pick my fabrics and colors based on, to me, what is in style and what works well. So I try to kind of do things that I think that are not going to be off-putting to people and I would like in my own home. And this kind of color pairing, in my opinion, looks very good. It would be good in my own home, in my opinion. So I went ahead and sanded everything back, and I got ready for that second coat of Centurion 1K semi-gloss top coat in the Edgecomb Gray. And I added a little bit of water to it for the second coat. But before I did that, I sanded everything with the Surf Prep Superfine. Okay, so for the upholstery, I'm not experienced enough to give you a very detailed tutorial of how to do this. I think eventually I will be, especially for something simple like dining room slip seat covers. But, right now I'm just going to kind of try to give you an overview of the process and what to do and some helpful tips. Really, I can say that, for most projects for slip seat covers, 2-inch foam is going to be the more appropriate kind of choice. I just go to Joann and I get their 2-inch high density foam, and I use 3M spray, and I use just some Dacron that I find at Joann. Eventually, I'll probably start ordering my products off, Amazon or from Sale Right or one of those companies. I've been using an electric kitchen knife to kind of cut my foam, and when I wrap my Dacron around it, I usually temporarily staple it. I've done it differently in different ways, and I've seen people staple Dacron, and I've seen people not staple Dacron, and I've honestly seen a lot of different methods for upholstery in general. But what I find works best for me in this particular case is that I trim it all the way to the edge, I remove those staples, and then I come back with my fabric on top of that. And I find that it leads to the least kind of lumpy kind of method for doing this. And also, when I go over that Dacron, I try to make sure that nowhere I have bare wood touching fabric. That's something that you really want to avoid. So, like I said, I'm not a upholstery expert, but what I can say is that I am learning, and I am somebody that has a decent amount of experience in furniture refinishing in general. And when it comes to this kind of thing, I kind of just look at each piece differently, where it needs a pleat. If it doesn't need a pleat, certain fabrics don't need pleats. Certain templates are rounded enough to not need them. And I tried the whole, middle four, sides, staple to position it that you see on a lot of tutorials. And I think that that works in a lot of cases. But some of the templates that I've worked on in this on these videos have been really rough templates. And kind of what I found is that I, generally speaking, like to try to start at that middle staple and then work all the way out on the corner where the fabric is going to be showing. So let's say that I have the front. I'm going to work out from that side and go all the way to the front, and then I'll work from the front towards the side. And what I'll end up with is a pleat that shows where I want it at. So I'll do the area where I don't want the pleat last, and when I fold it over, I'll end up with kind of like a rounded looking corner with the pleat where I want it at. I've tried the whole staple in the corner and everything, and it just, I don't know, I had a hard time with it. I'm not really good enough at upholstery to know where that corner staple needs to be at. So I kind of just look at each piece and just take it in strides. So I found that before I reinstalled everything, basically with every single one, I had to go back and kind of put some more staples in. And after I did that, I got everything positioned and into place, and I put all the templates back on and took some pictures and got it uploaded to Facebook Marketplace. So thanks for watching. If you're interested in restoration videos, furniture in particular, then please subscribe.